There is a quiet shift happening right beneath the surface of your life right now. If you have been feeling a strange energy or an unexplainable weight in the air lately, you need to know that it is not your imagination playing tricks on you. Deep within their heart, a final and very heavy choice is slowly taking shape. It is a decision that they can no longer run away from, and your name and your presence are written directly into the core of it. On the outside, they might seem completely calm, distant, or even detached from everything that happened between you. They may walk through the world as if nothing is wrong, but the truth they once tried so hard to avoid has grown far too heavy for them to ignore any longer. This situation is no longer just about them missing you or wishing things were different. It is about what your deep connection awakened inside their soul and what it forced them to look at within themselves. Your bond brought things to light that they had kept hidden for years, forcing them to confront their deepest realities. If you are sensing this final decision happening in the energetic space right now, hit like and let me know you are here. They are currently standing at a massive crossroads in their life, and no matter which path they try to take, every single one of them somehow circles right back to you. For a very long time, they tried everything they could to distract their mind from the thought of you. They buried themselves in the loud noise of daily routines, endless hours of work, stubborn pride, and deliberate emotional distance. They truly believed that if they kept silent for long enough, the feelings would slowly fade away into the past. They thought that silence would weaken the bond and make it easier to forget. But some connections are simply built to last, and they do not fade away just because time passes. The more they tried to suppress what they felt, the more their inner world treated your connection as something deeply meaningful, highly significant, and completely unresolved. Now they are looking back at everything and deeply questioning the false story they told themselves for such a long time. Comment shifting if you have been feeling this deep inner change happening within them lately. One side of their soul feels intensely drawn to you with an unavoidable magnetic force that they cannot control. At the same time, the other side of them continues to resist because admitting this truth requires an intense amount of raw honesty. It requires them to completely release the old defenses and emotional walls that once kept them safe from getting hurt. They are finally sitting alone with the absolute truth of their feelings, wondering why your memory keeps returning to them in their quietest moments and why no one else has ever been able to replace you. This is the heavy, uncomfortable space that always exists just before absolute clarity arrives. It is the place where the human mind can only resist the truth for so long before the false mask completely breaks apart. If they decide to return to you, it will be because they have finally recognized that a rare connection like yours does not appear twice in a single lifetime. And if they ultimately choose to walk away, you must understand that it will never mean you were lacking or unworthy in any way at all. Type yes if you want me to reveal what their heavy silence really means and see whether fear or truth wins this battle in the end. If they cannot step forward, it will simply mean they were not yet ready for the profound level of honesty and inner transformation that truly loving you required from them. That is exactly why your only role in this moment is not to chase after them, not to force any outcomes, and not to try to control what happens next in this situation. You must let the truth unfold entirely on its own, in its own perfect time. You must let time reveal what words could not express clearly to you before. What is happening inside their heart right now carries a massive amount of real weight and depth. This is not just a passing doubt or a temporary mood that will disappear in a few days. It is a complete, ongoing internal struggle that continues to grow stronger with every sunrise. On one side of the scale, there is a powerful emotional pull toward you that is filled with vivid memories, deep warmth, intense longing, and a profound sense of true belonging that feels incredibly special. On the very opposite side of the scale, there is a loud, protective voice that has been shaped by past pain, old disappointments, and the terrifying fear of being hurt all over again. That guarded voice constantly tells them to stay hidden, to keep their distance, and to remain safe no matter what it costs them. These two powerful forces are constantly colliding within their mind, and the internal pressure is becoming much harder for them to ignore as the days pass by. They may try their best to hide within the routines of everyday life and keep themselves occupied with many different tasks all at once. They may even act on the outside as though none of this matters to them anymore. But the more they try to bury these feelings deep down into their subconscious, the more the truth rises directly to the surface. Because the real struggle was never happening outside of them, and it was never about external circumstances. It has always been a battle within their own heart and mind, and that is why the very next step they take carries so much significance for their entire future. You became a massive turning point in their life without either of you fully realizing what was happening in the beginning. Even if neither of you understood the depth of the connection at the start, something about this bond completely challenged the heavy walls they built to survive their past. It reached deep down and touched the real version of them that existed beneath all the control, beneath the outer appearances, and beneath all the careful ways they learned to protect themselves over time. Now, they are facing a very difficult choice that simply cannot be avoided forever. They can choose to remain within the comfortable limits of who they have always been, or they can choose to step into an entirely unfamiliar version of themselves. That new version of them requires immense courage, vulnerability, softness, and an emotional risk that feels completely terrifying and new to them. This constant inner struggle is completely exhausting them from the inside out. It shows up in the inconsistency you have probably felt from them, the painful push and pull, the sudden shifts between closeness and distance, and the confusing moments when they seem completely ready to move forward, followed immediately by times when they withdraw into isolation again without warning. This behavior is not always a matter of manipulation or cruel games on their part. Sometimes it is simply what happens when a person deeply desires a connection but desperately fears the personal transformation that naturally comes along with it. As this internal pressure increases inside their soul, it begins to burn away all the old illusions they used to hold onto so tightly. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a brief moment, a casual chapter, or a passing person in their life. They are being pushed by the universe to see you with a much greater clarity than ever before. And even more importantly, they are being pushed to see themselves in a completely new light. Their old memories of you are returning with a fresh, undeniable strength. The shared emotions you both experienced are resurfacing with a much stronger intensity than in earlier times. Comment crossroads if you can feel deep down that they are standing at a major turning point regarding you. Every single silence from them carries much more meaning now than it ever did before. Every day of your absence feels heavier on their heart. This discomfort they are feeling is absolutely necessary for their growth, because real, lasting decisions are never formed through avoidance or running away from the truth. True choices are formed only when the confusion begins to clear away and the heart is no longer willing to remain hidden beneath the weight of fear and doubt. That internal clearing is happening right now, even if everything looks completely quiet and unchanged on the surface. There always comes a specific moment when uncertainty becomes far too heavy for a person to carry any longer, and they are reaching that exact moment steadily every single day. This is not happening because anything outside of them has changed dramatically, but rather because the human mind cannot remain divided forever in this painful way. For far too long, they tried to manage their deep feelings by minimizing them completely. They told themselves that the connection was not that important after all. They convinced their own mind that they could easily handle it, that the feelings would pass quickly, and that the situation did not require any real vulnerability or action from them. But something much deeper within their soul knows that those excuses are no longer true at this stage of their life, and that sudden awareness is what is bringing everything to the surface now with undeniable force. Emotions that run this deep do not stay still, and they do not disappear easily just because someone wishes they would. They expand in the silence, and they continue to evolve even when there is a total absence of communication. They wait patiently until the person can no longer deny what they truly feel inside their heart. Now, those buried emotions are returning to them in massive waves late at night, or in the quiet pauses during the day when they least expect it. They are finding themselves lost in memories they never expected to revisit so strongly, especially in the strange stillness that always follows a busy day. They are beginning to notice how naturally and effortlessly their thoughts drift right back to you again and again. They are realizing how your presence remains like a soft, beautiful hum in the background of their daily life, no matter what they are doing. They are seeing how all of their distractions completely fail to erase the persistent feeling that something deeply meaningful is missing from their world. Your choice to step back and your absence have played an incredibly powerful, quiet role in this entire process. By stepping back and letting them be, you left them entirely alone with their own unfiltered thoughts. That silence became a clear mirror for them, forcing them to face the missing comfort, the missing spark, and the profound emotional safety that your presence once gave to their life. When they truly felt the shape of what was gone, they completely stopped questioning whether you mattered, and they began comparing your rare, beautiful depth to the emptiness of everything else around them. They are beginning to understand something very profound about their current state of mind. They are starting to realize that they were not simply missing a person in their life or longing for a past relationship. They were deeply missing the specific version of themselves that came alive whenever they were around you. When they were with you, they were more open, more honest, and far more emotionally connected than they usually allow themselves to be with anyone else. You brought out a light in them that they had kept hidden away for a very long time. And now, the true pain of living far away from that beautiful version of themselves has become far too strong for them to ignore any longer. This realization marks a truly significant turning point in their personal journey. You must understand this clearly and without any doubt in your mind. When a person starts missing who they became when they were with you, the question is no longer whether the connection mattered at all. The real question becomes whether they are willing to return to the deep truth that the connection revealed within them. As this awareness deepens further inside their mind every day, the outer world begins to lose some of its power to distract them completely. They can try their best to stay incredibly busy with many different activities. They can try to surround themselves with crowds of people or throw themselves completely into their daily work, their personal goals, their future plans, and all the daily noise of life. But beneath all of that frantic activity and distraction, there is still one very quiet, steady current leading right back to the exact same place. It leads back to you, to what was truly felt between you, and to everything that still remains completely unfinished in your story. This is the exact stage in their spiritual journey where the protective ego begins to lose its strong hold on them. It happens gradually, piece by piece, every single day. The human ego always wants distance, separation, and complete control at any cost because it believes that isolation equals safety. But the deeper part of their soul is finally beginning to understand that complete disconnection carries its own terrible kind of pain and emptiness. Sometimes that constant pain of being disconnected becomes much heavier than the fear of closeness and vulnerability. So right now, in the quiet spaces of their mind, they are carefully weighing two possible futures against each other. They are looking at the safe, predictable life they are already familiar with, along with all of its emotional emptiness and loneliness. On the other hand, they are looking at the unknown path that carries real emotional risk, but also carries the beautiful chance of building something genuine, lasting, and deeply meaningful with you. For the very first time in their life, the ultimate possibility of real love is starting to feel much more valuable than the protection they once sought so desperately. That is exactly the place where true courage begins to grow inside a person. Real courage does not appear when fear disappears entirely from the heart. It happens when the truth becomes much more important than the fear itself. And with that deep awareness comes a quiet, beautiful stillness that settles all of their restless energy. The internal pressure is certainly still there inside them, but it feels completely different now than it did before. It feels much more steady, much more focused, and far more honest than it ever did in the earlier stages of your separation. They are no longer fighting or resisting every single feeling that arises within their heart. They are finally starting to sit quietly and let those deep feelings speak to them with absolute clarity. They are beginning to accept the fact that what they feel for you is entirely real, deep, and true. And that quiet acceptance brings a beautiful sense of peace to their troubled heart. This peace does not arrive because everything in their life has been resolved completely, but because the intense inner conflict is slowly turning into clear inner direction. They are currently standing right at the edge of an old, outdated version of their life, looking toward a brand new possibility that feels entirely different, and the only bridge that exists between these two worlds is a single, completely honest choice that they must make for themselves. This is their personal moment of total transparency and deep self-reflection. The heavy silence that once protected them from their feelings is now acting as a mirror, reflecting them back to themselves with total honesty. It is showing them exactly where their pride blocked the flow of love. It is showing them where their fear blocked the expression of truth, and where their constant avoidance created a painful distance that never needed to exist in the first place. They are constantly revisiting old conversations, fading memories, quick glances, and long pauses from the past. But they are doing so with far more emotional maturity now, with much more awareness, and with a deeper emotional capacity than they had before. They can look back now and see exactly where fear was making all of the major decisions in the past. They can also clearly see the immense value of what was trying to grow between the two of you naturally. This process is not only about regret or looking backwards into the past with sadness. It is truly about rearranging what matters most in their life from this moment forward. The superficial things they once placed far above your connection, such as their public image, their need for control, their false sense of safety, and their emotional self-protection, are all starting to feel completely empty. They mean nothing compared to the rare depth of something genuine and real. And something else is shifting very deeply as well inside their changing heart. Empathy is growing within them steadily, blooming like a flower in the desert. They are beginning to feel exactly what their cold distance must have felt like from your side of the connection. They are starting to understand the heavy emotional weight that you carried all by yourself while they stood back in confusion and silence. That deep understanding completely softens a person from the inside out. It humbles them gently and makes it much harder for them to hide behind emotional coldness or false indifference any longer. Because once personal responsibility enters the picture, everything changes in meaningful ways. They are no longer only reacting out of fear and running away like they used to do. They are beginning to become the true author of what they do next, moving forward with a much greater level of awareness. And when a person reaches that specific stage of growth, everything becomes much more serious in a very deep way. It is not a dramatic or loud change, but something deeply serious, quiet, and thoughtful. They now understand that whatever step they take next will reveal something profoundly truthful about the kind of person they choose to be. The final layers of their hesitation are beginning to dissolve slowly into the air. The old, looping thoughts of what they should have done or could have done are losing their tight grip on their mind. In their place, something much stronger and more permanent is forming inside their spirit. Comment heavy if the energy between you and this person has felt unusually heavy or intense lately. There is a growing sense of urgency that feels like a must. They feel that they must acknowledge what is real between you. They feel they must face the real consequences of what they feel so deeply. They feel they must stop wasting precious time in this emotional paralysis that keeps holding them back from happiness. Time itself is starting to feel completely different to them now. It feels much more valuable, much more limited, and far less endless than it did before. They are finally realizing that choosing to stay stuck in one place is also a choice, and it is often the most painful choice a person can make in the long run. This newfound clarity is not only existing in their mind, but it is something they can feel physically as a pressure in their chest. It appears as a quiet, heavy pressure whenever they think about reaching out to you, speaking honestly, or doing something real to fix the connection. The great unknown still frightens them. Of course it does, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is beginning to frighten them much more strongly. And that is exactly why real outward movement is getting closer with each passing day. Words that were once held back by pride are rising toward the surface completely naturally. Actions that once felt absolutely impossible for them to take are becoming harder and harder to avoid completely. Because once the truth grows this strong inside a soul, silence completely stops feeling safe or comfortable. It begins to feel absolutely unbearable for them to keep it inside. You need to remember this incredibly important point always. Whatever they choose to do next will not come from a random impulse or a sudden, fleeting thought. It will come from a long, difficult, and profoundly honest process of finally facing themselves in the mirror without any more excuses or places to hide. That is exactly why this specific moment matters so much in the story of their life. This is not a passing feeling that will fade away next week. It is a true reckoning that changes a person deeply, transforming them from the core. It happens very slowly at first and very quietly in the dark, and then it happens all at once when the divine time finally comes. At the absolute center of everything, there is one undeniable truth that stands completely strong against the wind. You changed something within them in lasting, permanent ways. You reflected a beautiful part of their true potential back to them with perfect clarity. You became a mirror for their soul, a catalyst for their spiritual awakening, and a steady point of light in a time when they felt completely lost in their own uncertainty. Even during this long period of silence, your lasting impact remained fully present with them every single day. That is why they are now reaching a much deeper level of awareness than they ever have before. All the outside noise of the world is fading away gradually. The true path back to you is becoming clearer and clearer with each passing moment. The question is no longer whether this connection affected them deeply, because we already know it did. The only real question left is when they will fully act on what they now understand so clearly inside their heart. Layer by layer, all of their old confusion is falling away from them, revealing a quiet, grounded certainty that they can no longer ignore or run away from. They now realize with total clarity that trying to control their feelings only made those feelings grow stronger, and pretending not to know the truth is simply no longer an option for them. If you have been feeling this profound shift in the energy around you, trust your intuition completely.